We are live. Today is Wednesday. And so far, it's glorious. It is glorious. I can hear the birds singing. Well, hopefully not this one just yet. Still a little early for him, but you know how it is. Anyway, what seems to be is to those to whom it seems to be. Let me say it again, a little bit slower, so you can process it. What seems to be is to those to whom it seems to be. What does that mean? What seems to be is to those to whom it seems to be. So that simple phrase is telling us what you hold to be true is true to you. To you. Now, sometimes people get a little silly when they say things like, yeah, I don't believe that this is blah, 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 blah. I don't believe that. When I get the right examples, I'll tell you what they are. But right now, they're not here. They'll come to me. Collectively as people, we believe a certain amount of things. And because we hold them to be true, they are true. Not because they actually are true. It is only because we believe them to be true. Let me give you an example. When you plant corn, you reap corn. That is true. That does not depend upon my upbringing. That does not depend upon how I see the world. That does not depend upon anybody or anything. That is truth right there, right then. That's just what it is. Now, if you believe that you are not beautiful, that's your opinion. But because you believe it with every fiber of your being, you must see the evidence. Because you see, we are never made a liar of, Again, we are never made a liar of. Meaning, you're always telling the truth. Oh, Angela, what do you mean? Some people lie all the time. I know that people lie. I remember doing it. Sweetie, you have to go to bed. Because if you don't go to bed, you have to say those things to get kids to do what you want them to do. Right? What you hold to be true about yourself, you have to see the evidence of it. Some people say God punishes. And they believe that wholeheartedly. So that if they do something wrong, the guilt within them is so fierce. Do you know that they do suffer a punishment? Whatever they think that punishment is what they suffer. Not because God punishes, but because they believe God punishes, because they believe God rewards. What seems to be is to those to whom it seems to be. You see, you could get someone who knows within themselves that there's something, you could say, greater than themselves. Right? They just know it within themselves. Well, then, it's true for them. It is true for them because of the fact that they believe it. Let me give you the example of gardening again so you can compare and contrast to understand, comprehend the difference between what seems to be is versus what is. When you bite into an apple, you plucked it from an apple tree. When you bite into a sweet Georgia peach, you picked it from a peach tree. Okay? When you eat peanuts, you pull them out of the ground from a nut bush. Hello? That truth does not rely upon me believing it. That truth does not rely upon my opinion. That truth simply is. Water always flows downhill. Listen, the day that we see water flowing uphill, oh boy, we got a problem. We have a problem. Water always seeks to go to the depth. That is the nature of water. That is the truth about water. But with people, because we have the ability to think and to reason, we form opinions. Back in the day, we'll get a little bit political here for a minute, so you grasp what I'm saying. Back in the day, I mean, I shouldn't even say back in the day because still in some medical textbooks, they say that Black people have a higher pain tolerance, thus we need fewer anesthetic, less drugs for pain, allegedly. Allegedly. You have a smaller brain, thereby you must be stupid, allegedly. That is not true. But to the person that believes that it is, they will treat you according to what they believe. Go back to the garden. If you are eating sugar snap peas, you planted sugar snap peas. Because you don't like red hair doesn't mean that red hair is ugly. It just means you don't like it. There is truth, and then there is perceived truth. So sometimes we have to take a moment to really, truly examine what we hold to be true. We have given things names, yes. Okay, if I didn't give the rose bush a name, every time I saw that plant and it bloomed the exact same way, I would know they were the same thing. I would know they were the same thing just because I see it being repeated over and over and over and over again. Because we could agree on that. You look at that bush, that's a rose bush. You look at that one, that's tulips. I know it seems like it doesn't make sense sometimes about what is objective and what is subjective. You know when people say, I'm living my truth? You can't live mine. So the only truth you can live. Do you get the difference? What seems to be is. What seems. What seems to be. Itty bitty, you're okay. You're okay. Good morning, handsome. A rooster will always crow, unless he's wearing a collar that makes him not, which is cruel. Some hens will crow too, you know. If there is no rooster around, one of them has to give a warning signal to, to protect the flock. So she has to make some kind of a noise above all the others. But because a hen crows in that instant, it doesn't make her a rooster. It makes her a hen who has assumed the role of protector for the flock. Roosters are very distinct. It is not what seems to be, it is what is. He is what he is, not what I assume he is, because only hens lay eggs. Of course, unless she has a medical condition. Objective. For some people, you can taste, many people can taste the same thing. And some will say, oh, that's tart. That's tangy. That's sweet. That's bitter. Same thing they're all tasting, but their perceptions are different. When you hear a rooster crow on any part of this planet, you know what you've heard. There's no guessing. There's no opinion. There's no, maybe it is. Of course, there's that little bird. I forget which bird it is, but it mimics. He's so cute, though, and little. He mimics the sound of many things. Right? Let's talk about cause and effect. There is always cause. There is always effect. Well, here's something I learned recently. Everybody experiences this at some point. I thought it was rather interesting. When you get the urge to vomit, sorry if you're eating. When you get the urge to vomit, what happens in your mouth? You get a rush of saliva in your mouth, don't you? Now, this is the perfect example of cause and effect. Do you know why that saliva just secretes itself in a large volume in your mouth? To neutralize the stomach acid that is on its way up, so your teeth don't get ruined. Cause and effect is not my opinion. It is not anybody's opinion. It is cold, hard fact. It is principle. And we are governed by them. I saw this National Geographic thingy with this fish. And she has to lay her eggs at the back of a leaf. A fish laying his eggs at the back of a leaf? Yeah, not a leaf underground. A leaf above ground that hangs over the water. So she calculates, and the male who's going to fertilize the eggs is right next to her, and they have to jump as one. Hello. Now, let me tell you something, Linda. This was fascinating. They have to jump as one and land on the back of that leaf together, so that when she lays the eggs, he can fertilize them right there. Now, once she lays the eggs and lets go, and he fertilizes the eggs and lets go, they have another problem. Because the eggs are not underwater, they're going to dry out. So do you know what the male does? Because the female is long gone. She just lays the eggs, and that's it. She did her job. She lays the eggs, and she books it out of there. She's gone. He fertilizes the eggs, and he drops back into the water. And you know what he does? He stays beneath that leaf, and he spits water at those eggs to keep them lubricated so that they hatch in a few days. Now, cause and effect. It seems fascinating that they do that. How do they know how to do it? It is something within them. It is their design. It is their nature, so they do it. But if you look at how they work together as a unit, cause and effect is what happens. You see, because we do not recognize cause and effect, we think we're just living randomly, coincidentally. We think that's how we live. So, because we don't know the principles as a giant collective on the planet, we just think things happen. Really and truly, we think things happen. You know, you plant something, you reap it. We just think that that happens. No, there are some things, like the principles, well, the only things, the principles, you cannot opinionate them away. They have nothing to do with an opinion. It has nothing to do with a mood. Oh, I feel sad today, so the principles don't exist. What? You think that's what it does? Oh, I feel happy today. Well, yeah, principles don't exist. No. You can, what seems to be is all you want, but those principles remain. So it is up to us to learn to recognize when they are at work. Mind you, they're always on, they're always at work, but to be able to see them and know what you're looking at versus an opinion. You see, my grandfather didn't eat pork. He didn't like the way it smelled when you cooked it. So he never ate it. But every Christmas he'd buy a ham because in the Caribbean, that's what you do. You get a ham, right? He never ate any, but he bought it for the family. That was just him. He didn't like it. He didn't like it, right? We do things based upon how we're raised. This is where religion comes in. We do things according to how we're raised. Mm. We do things according to how we are raised. We do things according to what we have learned to do, which is what makes things seem to be. Universally, for English, we all learn A is for apple, B is for boy, C is for cat. Universally, we learned those things. Universally, so that everybody's reading the same thing, so that everybody is doing the same thing. It is what we learn. And because we learn it, we do it. So this is what it is when you're doing the English language. Everybody learns the same thing, so we can all do the same thing. But that doesn't mean it is objective. It just means we've learned it as a collective. If something happened and we had to learn something completely different, we'd forget about English in a matter of years. And then when somebody says, "Do you know we used to learn English?" Some would say, "No, we didn't. There's no evidence that we ever learned to do that." Opinion, because they did not come across it. They did not learn to do it. Our facilitator asked my son if he's ever seen a record player. He's like, "On TV, in a video, I've seen a record player." Why am I telling you this? Because there are certain things that we learn in the world that allow us to form an opinion. And because we live by said opinion that we've formed, that thing, that opinion that we live by, we have to see the evidence of it in the world. This is why repetition is so good, bad, and indifferent. When you see a particular thing being played over and over and over again, with a particular culture in it, over and over and over and over again, you begin to form the opinion that that culture is somehow broken. That culture is bad. That culture needs help, Lord. Bless their heart. So now that every time you go out into the world and you see that culture, you believe that culture to be a certain way based upon what you've learned about them. Not that it is true, but that you have learned it. And because you believe it, you have to see the reality of it. Because you see the reality of something does not make it true. There is a difference between what is and what seems to be. I'm sure as we were growing up, if you grew up in any kind of multicultural area, you always heard that this particular culture was really good at math. Oh, oh, right? You always heard this particular culture was great at sports. You have to see the evidence of that because you believe it. As within, so without. So the belief that you hold is what dictates your destiny. If you say you gotta work hard, you gotta grind, you gotta hustle. Every day I'm hustling. If you believe that to be true, then every time you start to hustle, you get great ideas. And you become prosperous because of hustling. Because you hold hustling to be true. But to the other person who thinks, nah, man, you don't have to hustle. You just got to imagine. If you hear that, you think it is strange because you think, "Ugh, what do you mean imagine? Imagining never makes anything happen." Yeah, because you believe you have to hustle. So that's why when you hear something that is contrary to what you believe, your hackles rise and you argue and you say, that's not true. Well, what seems to be is to those to whom it seems to be. If you believe that hard work is the way, then you have to work hard. If you believe that there is an easier way, you will always find an easier way. So, what seems to be is to those to whom it seems to be. But go back to the garden and comprehend that what you plant, you reap. That has nothing to do with what seems to be. That simply is. Every 28 days, the tide changes. The moon gets closer or it retreats. The closer it gets, the higher the water level. So you can't go clam digging in a high tide because you can't touch the sand. There's too much water. But on a low tide, when the water has receded, the sand is bare. So now you can go home and on your calendar, you can count the distance between high tide and low tide so that you can clam dig. That has nothing to do with, well, I believe I can go clam digging. No, you observe when you can go clam digging. You don't believe it. You observe when you can go because something happens to bring about the effect of you going. Versus a lady should always wear a skirt that is at least 3 inches below her knees. That's a belief. That is something you learned. I learned that too, but let me tell you something, Linda. Me and my 4'11" self, I have long legs, and I will flaunt those bad boys. I'm gonna tell you. End of story. I'm gonna flaunt those bad boys, whether they be jeans or shorts. But here's something. I'll tell you what I believe. I don't wear my booty shorts in public. If I'm gardening in my backyard or I'm cleaning my house, I will put those booty shorts on because I believe that as a lady, decorum is necessary. I'm not going to go outside for the general public to see my butt. No, thank you. Because I what? Learned that a lady should behave in a particular way. I learned that. Thereby, I hold it to be true and I live by it. But it has nothing to do with the raspberry bushes out in the yard because I'm always going to pick raspberries from that bush. Do you grasp the difference between things that you have learned that influence your beliefs, thereby making them true, versus the observation of things that are, they just are, versus what have you been conditioned to do? So what seems to be is, to those to whom it seems to be, is based upon the conditioning that you have received. But because you have been conditioned, you must see the evidence of your conditioning. Because that is the way the principles work. As within, so without. As above, so below. So whatever way you have been conditioned is what you will see the evidence of. But because you have been conditioned and you see the evidence of it, does not make it true en masse. It does not make it is. Plant corn, reap corn, that is. High tide, low tide, that is. Every fruit after its own kind, that is. Rhythm compensates, that is. Oh, I'm in the mood for chocolate today. That is conditioning. There's a reason why you want the chocolate. Something you've experienced, you've conditioned yourself to want the chocolate at a particular time. Not that you want it, but you believe it to be true. So, I'm not going to prattle on anymore. But I will say this. Spot the difference as you go through the world today. Spot the difference between what is and what seems to be. You see, because the more you tell people things, war, rumors of war, violence, well, it is so prevalent. Now, what ends up happening? You're conditioned to fear. Well, scripture says that which you fear will come upon you. Why? Because of the principle that is. What is that principle? As within, so without. The principle of correspondence. So you walk with fear on the inside. You have to experience fearful things on the outside. Because you are never made a liar of. You are always true. Always. You are always true to that which you hold yourself true to. So what seems to be is, to those to whom it seems to be. Anyhow, I'm sure that there will be questions in my DMs later on. Some questions, I'm sure there might be some other things in there. Talking about, you don't know what you're talking about, you crazy. The exercise is this. Learn the difference between what is and what seems to be. What is? You reap what you have sown. That is not a belief. That's not a feeling. It is an observation. If you think that you don't look good in green, if you think you don't look good in yellow, so you don't wear those colors, that's just what seems to be. Because somewhere along the line, you heard you don't look good in those colors. There's that line from the movie Something New when he asks her, why all the beige? And she says, because mother thinks color is for babies and hookers. No, I think she said whores. She said mother thinks that color is for babies and whores. And I was like, oh, so this is why she has no color. She just painted everything beige because she believed that color was for babies and hookers because it was what she learned. So that's what seems to be. And sure enough, when she started to go with all this color, her mother says, oh, you've gone all bohemian. Just because she believes that color is a problem. She didn't wear too many bright colors. How ostentatious. Oh. It is only what seems to be, but not what is. So, who's here with us today? Hey, K-Frame. It's good to see you here in these YouTube streets. And for the others in these YouTube streets who've not made themselves known, I see you. And Facebook and TikTok, I see you too. Remember TikTok, I'm not streaming live through you. I'm streaming through a platform to get to you. So I don't necessarily see your comments if you're making them. So that's why it's not that I don't want to respond. I can't see them based upon the method that I use. If I didn't use this method, I wouldn't be able to stream through TikTok because I don't have the numbers. You understand? You have to have a certain amount of followers or whatever in order to stream live through TikTok. But you know how we roll, we circumvent, right? To get the message out. But anyhow, I see you. Yoda Green, I see you here in these Twitter streets. Ow, I see you. Ray Ray, honey. Oh, honey, I haven't seen you in a while. Moon and Dolphin Duck, I see you. And with that, I say thank you all for being here. And I will say this for the exercise that you may or may not undertake. You don't have to. But I will suggest this to you. You want to change your life. Then start seeing what is so that you can recognize the difference between what seems to be. Because presently, what seems to be is ruling your life. Hello? What seems to be is ruling your life versus what is. What seems to be would be the opinions, the beliefs that you presently hold. Oh, I can't do this because I don't have any connections. I can't do this because I'm not tall. I can't do this because I'm not blonde. I can't do this. Oh, I can only do this because I'm black. Blah, blah, blah. Whoa, whoa, whoa. Hold your horses, honey. Hold your horses. That is only what seems to be. And what seems to be is to those to whom it seems to be. So learn the difference between what is. Both of them are observable. What is and what seems to be. Both of them can be observed with the naked eye. But one is as a result of your opinion of yourself, and the other is principle. Principle governs all. So even the whatever you believe about yourself is governed by principle. That is why what seems to be is to those to whom it seems to be. And with that, my beautiful friends, I know today's message may have seemed a little bit far left field, but this is why Neville Goddard, when he says to assume the feeling of the wish fulfilled, he's telling you, make that something you believe to be true, and it has to become. That is what he means. He's telling you that what seems to be is to those to whom it seems to be. So when you hear no, you're not allowed to, or no, you are denied. That may seem to be an objective fact, but it isn't. So he's telling you, what is it that you believe? Do you believe that you can be all things through Christ who gives you strength? Because you know you quote scripture. Do you believe that you can accomplish anything? Well, if you believe that you can accomplish anything, well, then what seems to be is to those to whom it seems to be. So then you will accomplish anything. But if you do not believe that you can accomplish anything because of all the barriers and the roadblocks and the excuses that we use, because with the naked eye, we can't see it, then you won't accomplish it because you do not believe that you can. So, in other words, what I'm saying to you is, one does not live their lives based upon what they can only see. You live your life according to principle. What do the principles say? The principles say mentalism. The all is mind. The universe is a mental creation. As above, so below, as within, so without. And everything is always moving. Nothing can stand still. Because if it stood still, we would not change, would we? We'd remain the same. Oh. And it always moves through a stage. Polarity. It moves through the stage based upon its nature. Love and hate are just one thing. They're same in their nature. They're the same in their nature. They're not different. That's why you can come up with a movie called A Thin Line between love and hate. A what now? A thin line. You know what makes that line thin? Look at any crime of passion. They were murdered because they were loved. Or they were murdered because they were hated. But either way, the outcome was the same. Thereby telling you that extremes meet. They appear to be extreme, love and hate. Nope, they're one and the same. Let that person stop doing what you appreciate, and you won't like or love them anymore. So you see, polarity. And then the way it moves in its pattern, in its rhythm, brings about a cause which has an effect. Every cause has its effect, and every effect has its cause. And then finally, we're always in a state of generation. Regenerate an idea, masculine. To give form and shape to the idea is feminine. That is. It is not what one believes, those principles. They have nothing to do with belief, but they have everything to do with observation. And no amount of dancing naked in the moonlight is going to make it change. They are what they are. But it is us with our opinions. And this is why the opinion, even the opinion, is subject to law. That is why when you hold something to be true, it has to be true for you. Because it is subject to law, it is subject to principle. As within, so without. So whatever you hold within yourself to be true, you must always see the evidence of it because that is law. So the thing that you hold to be true is subject to law, subject to principle. So that if you change the belief, the law doesn't change, but you change the belief, and now your outward experiences change it to match. So you see, the thing that you can do to bring about a change, when you change your opinion of something, is subjective, which tells you that you have the power to change your mood, change your attitude. And if you change the attitude is subject to principle, subject to law. Every cause has its effect. So you change to a particular attitude, you change to something new that you want to believe, then your outcome will change to match what you just changed. So that is the difference between what is and what seems to be. What seems to be is subject to law. What seems to be is subject to the law because the law is. If that makes sense, yay. If it doesn't make sense, slide into my DMs, and you know what? We'll do a live stream on it just to elaborate more and open it up more so that you truly grasp that whatever it is you believe is subject to the law. And because it is subject to the law, you have to see the evidence of it in the world. But because you see the evidence of it, does not make it true. It just means that thing is subject to law. So to you, it has to be true. You can sit here and espouse to me all the reasons why you don't like blue, but you're only ever telling me why you don't like blue. So you will encounter all the reasons why blue is just, ugh. But if I say, oh, I love blue, I'll begin to see all the reasons why I do. Our moods, our mental attitudes are subject to principles. You know, when you buy something and or you hear about a sale and it says these dates are subject to change, right? They can change at any time. Exactly. Our opinions can change at any time. And every time the opinion changes, the outward expression of that opinion changes too. Because that is what is subject to principle. Everything is subject to law. Everything is subject to principle, including our opinions. So the opinions we hold of ourselves are subject to change. They're subject to change. They bend to change because change is inevitable because of those principles. Everything is moving. So even though it looks like, oh my God, my whole life has been this way, even though it looks like that, that is just a belief that you hold. Oh my God, and you hold it so deep within that you see the evidence of it all day. But if you can remember that your opinions are subject to change, they bow to change. What is a subject? Not something you learn in school. To be subject to, think about kings and queens. They have subjects, which means something that bends to their will. If the queen says, off with their heads or let them eat cake, well, everybody's going to do it because you are subject. You bow to the queen. Subject. You submit to. Everything submits to principle and not by force either. The principles don't force, they don't have to. You will bend to them, whether you want to or not. You see, because it is us who will create that force and that to say, well, I refuse. Listen, you can refuse cause and effect all you want, but you will still live by it. You can pretend all you want that cause and effect don't exist, but you will still be subject to cause and effect. Not because cause and effect is a brutal master, but cause and effect is. It just is. So learn the difference between what is and what seems to be. Because when you recognize the difference between what seems to be in contrast to what is, you will know how to use what is to bring about the changes in your life. Because your experiences are what seem, but what seems to be is subject to. And you can change what seems to be. What seems to be is just your belief that you hold about something. I'm going to land there because I got to get ready. But sing it, bad boy, sing it. He is just the sweetest. And for all of you who are wondering what happened to Popcorn, Popcorn now lives on the farm with all his siblings and his mommy and daddy, his real mommy and daddy. He's out there in their farm streets talking about I'm a bad boy. And the hens are like, oh, you're a bad boy, are you? Well, I'm gonna show you bad boy. Then you'll understand where the term henpecked comes from. Because they put him in his place. They show him the pecking order. Hello. And he will either rise, which I know that he will, because of his temperament. I know that he will. It's just something I've observed about him. Ah, he's beautiful. He really is. And so that's where he is, and where he deserves to be, because he's just so full of life and pizzazz. He's a young one, a young cockerel. So he's got all that puff in his chest, and that strut. You should, like, really and truly, nothing was as beautiful as watching him strut. But anyway, learn the difference between what is and what seems to be, so that you can apply what is to change your life from what it presently seems to be. Remember, what seems to be is just your opinion, things that you believe to be true. And so long as you continue to believe them, then you have to live it. I love you, and I will see you on the morrow. Countdown initiated. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Much love to each and every one of you. Fan base, I got 2 minutes, because it's 5:53. I got 2 minutes. Because I gotta be on time. Anyway, I will see you all tomorrow morning, 7 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, right here on YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, TikTok, Fanbase. You heard? These young people nowadays and their lingo, they crack me up, these young people. Anyway, I love you all. And remember, what seems to be is to those to whom it seems to be. Learn the difference between what is and what seems to be, so that you can change your life from what it presently seems to be. Peace out, everybody. Peace out.